Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. David Crockett.
Thank you, President Alberg, for that nice introduction, and warm greetings to my colleagues on the faculty and staff, members of the Board of Trustees, distinguished guests, family members and friends, and of course, graduates. I'm honored to speak to you today. Graduates, welcome to your final lecture. But don't worry, I'm not going to take the entire period. The main event is yet to come, and I'm only a very small speed bump on that way. Now, traditionally, commencement speakers take this opportunity to focus on the transition of one phase of life to the next and to exhort and encourage graduates to do great things in the future. But rather than focus on new beginnings, I want to focus on endings. You have all proven that you can finish something, which is why that you're here. And some of you are not only finishing your college career, but you are finishing it well. And so what I want to do today is talk about finishing well, not just a degree program, but life itself. Now, it's not my intention to be morbid on this festive occasion, so I'm going to channel Aristotle. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle argues that all human beings seek happiness as the highest human good. It's higher than health or wealth, higher than pleasure, power, or honor, because those are all things we seek for the sake of happiness. Happiness, though, we seek that for its own sake. And happiness is not the bland, watered-down, contemporary sense of pleasant feelings. For Aristotle, happiness refers to everything that goes into making human beings thrive and flourish as rational animals, living a life that makes full use of the moral and intellectual virtues, really living a good life. But what I've always found interesting about Aristotle's argument is his insight that we really can't truly call someone happy until he's dead, because we need to know how his life ends before we can assess all the data. Now, his example was King Priam of Troy, who lived a long life, and he had it all: power, fame, honor, wealth, several wives, 50 sons, and the most beautiful daughter-in-law in the world. But if we faculty have done our jobs right, you know what happened. He lost it all at the end when the Greeks sacked Troy. Aristotle understood that no one would envy Priam because of his end. To employ an artistic metaphor, our lives are like a novel or a movie, in that they unfold in time. And I imagine we have all had the experience of reading a book or watching a movie thinking everything was proceeding swimmingly until the ending ruined it. For my wife, that was The Great Escape. Now, this is a great movie. It has everything you would want: Nazi villains, courageous POWs, Steve McQueen on a motorcycle. But when we got to the end and the Nazis did what Nazis do, spoiler alert, my wife, who was not familiar with the story, turned to me aghast and said, "Are you serious?" And ever since then, the movie has been known in our house as The Not-So-Great Escape. So I'd submit to you that finishing well is very important. Aristotle isn't the only ancient writer to comment on the value of ending well. The Christian apostle Paul of Tarsus loved to employ sports metaphors in his letters, constantly referring to running the race or competing in games, very much the idea of living life as a long-distance runner. And we can all think of examples where an athlete relaxed with 10 meters to go in a race only to lose the gold, or where our team was 20 seconds away from a championship and couldn't slam the door on LeBron James. Paul gave up traditional power for a higher calling, even though it led to execution at the hands of the Roman state. And while you might say that both Paul of Tarsus and Priam of Troy came to similarly unhappy ends, in his final letter to his disciple Timothy, Paul felt confident enough in the conduct of his life that he could say he had fought the good fight, he had finished the course, he had kept the faith. So for him, the end was victorious, and he finished well. So taking these examples from the ancient world, my primary injunction to you graduates today is to finish well. Whether undergraduates or graduate students, you are leaving one phase of your formal education and embarking on what is tritely known as the rest of your life. And I want to suggest to you that it is not too early to think about how your biography will be written when you are gone. And if finishing well, if going the distance is important to you, and it should be, it makes sense to think about how we should do what we should do now to get where we want to be then. And since this is the commencement ceremony, I will highlight 3 things that you should have gotten from your experience here at Trinity that can help you finish well. First, recognize that your education does not have to end. We talk here about creating lifelong learners, and it's true. Education does not have to end, and it shouldn't. Now, I'm the first person to acknowledge that much of the substance that you've digested in your courses here will not add anything to your 401k or to your prospects for promotion. But your life will be more colorful if you can see the connection between the Matrix and Plato's Republic, understand that Forbidden Planet is a science fiction gloss on Shakespeare's The Tempest, or ponder the irony of the fact that Stalin and Prokofiev died on the same day. So I strongly urge you to continue your education. When you read for pleasure, and I don't think you can be considered liberally educated if you don't read for pleasure, insert something timeless into your queue. Maybe you can make every 10th book something that was written over 100 years ago. Listen to music that takes up more than 4 minutes on your iPod, something that's complex and demands sustained attention. And while you're at it, do something really radical and unplug, disconnect. Maybe go on a social media fast and learn the disciplines of solitude and contemplation. Now, how will this serve the cause of ending well? I would argue that how you spend your free time is just as important as how you spend your time at work. What is your free time free for? In other words, when you have freedom, how do you use it? Quite simply, your life will be more enriched. You will have taken the intellectual feast that you have been privileged to consume these past few years and sustained it throughout your entire life. You'll be able to say someday that this concert was a transcendent experience, or that this book changed the way you thought about something. I hope you have already had these experiences, but they don't have to end until you end well. Second, recognize that the habits of education do not have to end. And I hope that one habit you have been encouraged to develop here is openness to new data. Socrates understood that the more you know, the more you should realize you don't know. Now, intellectual pride is a vice particularly common to academics, but the fact is that the more education you have, the more you know about less. So I think it's important to have a strong sense of intellectual humility. We teach you here to question things and search for answers. Well, don't stop questioning things, and don't stop searching for answers. Test arguments. Don't think you have all the answers about things you really aren't qualified to think that about. On a practical level, don't think that the final word has been given by your favorite talk radio host, or shouting head on what passes for television news, or your favorite blogger. Instead, take a look at different sides and draw conclusions only after a careful examination of facts and logic. Being open to new data doesn't mean you can't have firm principles or convictions. It just means you're always open to better arguments. How will this serve the cause of ending well? Well, if nothing else, it will prevent you from looking like a fool. Knowing what you don't know is a form of knowledge. But more important, if you think you know what you don't know, if you are not open to new data and new arguments, you're basically saying that the habits of education developed here stop here. They're not transferable to real life. And I'd like to think that when your biography is written, the book will say that you were always growing and learning, that you made those around you better by your presence, that you set a good example as a colleague, as a supervisor, as a friend. You'll be a better employer, you'll be a better entrepreneur, you'll be a better spouse, parent, friend, and colleague. And maybe, just maybe, if more people were willing to do this, we would see a change in our political culture, which all too often assumes ill will on the part of others simply because of the party label they wear. One of my greatest failures as a teacher took place in a classroom several years ago. The students were having a vigorous discussion about some hot-button issue. Finally, one exasperated student exclaimed that the whole exercise was futile because, and I quote, "No one's going to change their minds." Really? No one's going to change their minds? Folks, if we can't be open to arguments, if we can't be persuadable, that is the victory of pride over truth. None of us should be so dogmatic that we refuse to consider the possibility that we are wrong. That's what leading a self-examined life means. Being open to new data and being willing to change your mind when presented with a superior argument. Third, recognize that the character and virtues acquired in the educational process do not end. More important than the details of course material are the virtues you have acquired in successfully navigating the curriculum to get here today. And I'm speaking particularly of virtues such as diligence, perseverance, and endurance. I've often told students that it doesn't take a genius to get a PhD, but it does take diligence, perseverance, and endurance. And you've already seen this in your education. Every time you push through the various tasks articulated on a course syllabus, you have demonstrated diligence. Every time you figured out how to juggle 2 or 3 exams in one day or get 2 papers in before the Thanksgiving break, you demonstrated perseverance. Every time you chose not to give up after a setback in class, maybe a bad grade or a lack of understanding about a topic, but instead fought through the desire to quit and ultimately succeeded, you demonstrated endurance. How will this serve the cause of ending well? Well, I suspect that's self-evident. This is certainly one place where your training and character should pay off for just about anything really worth doing in life, from working on marital relationships to raising children to making things better in your profession and community to making Republican government work, takes diligence, perseverance, and endurance. When you complained about seemingly irrational course expectations or the collision of multiple assignments due on the same day, just wait until the day comes when you have an argument with your spouse, a kid struggling with algebra, a car that breaks down, a less than desirable medical diagnosis, and a boss who tells you the report's due a day earlier than you expected. Contrary to those who believe we are here to serve and entertain students as though they were customers, I would gently suggest that education should be difficult because life is difficult. In fact, I think it's a truism that without these qualities, it's impossible to end well. Finally, I realize, of course, that it's a bit strange that I would presume to talk about ending well when I have not yet done so myself. But that's the odd thing about ending well. Once you've done it, it's too late to give commencement addresses about it. And since none of us knows how long our biography will be, it's a good thing to start working on now. So I close with the words of that wise sage, Gandalf the Grey. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. So congratulations, graduates, but don't stop here. Choose now to end well. Thank you.